So I've brought in the big guns for a special emergency pod because the VFL team evidently don't work on weekends anymore. Got Big Paolo in to discuss the week just gone, but also the exciting will count and make finals because a lot of people are off that bandwagon already.
A very warm welcome to you as well, Pommy. Looking forward to doing this, mate. It's a pleasure as always, my friend.
Mate, it's always great to get you invested and on the show. Thank you for joining as well. Obviously, we had the St Kilda game just gone, and as we know, it weren't the best, was it? Let's be honest.
No. From the onset, it was very poor, and we will delve deeper into it. But I thought the coaches made a lot of errant decisions leading into the game and during the game that completely cost us. And a lot has been spoken about the goal kicking, which is understandable, and it doesn't help. But it also doesn't help when 70 to 75% of the factor as to why you win was not, or why you win and lose was not dealt with in the first place, which was St Kilda's spread and uncontested work.
Mate, spot on. And Vossi did allude to that. Their ability to handle pressure, I thought, was a very smartly worded way of their ability to spread, which St Kilda did splendidly, was really an issue. They brought the pressure, but their ability to get away from the pressure. And it's interesting, Carlton had more pressure acts. They were well up, plus 20 in pressure acts, which is a good indicator that your team is on the ball pressure up-wise. Sometimes I get the impression, I don't know if this is too harsh, Carlton still have an air of a bit of the playground bully. We can dish it out, but when someone stands up to us, there is clear signs at times that midfield group particularly don't seem up to give it back.
No, and it depends on, it also depends on what you mean by up to it, because I think there's no question about our effort. There's no question about our desire at the actual contest itself, which is, we say that that's a non-negotiable, and it has been this year, and we know what the standard is for that. But at the same time, I think, I think we belted them in contested possessions, which is to be expected. You look at our midfield and the way that they're physically shaped compared to the way the Saints are shaped. But we just couldn't get our ball movement going at all away from stoppage. And I think, you look back at the numbers on this game, and the one thing I wanted to see in this game was it reminded me of that 2020 game when St Kilda slaughtered us on the spread. And I thought the players themselves would have learnt from that game, but clearly not. But I solely put this game on the coaches for the mix that they put into the midfield. I thought the decision making from them was deplorable, really. Zach Fisher, who was phenomenal in the heart of midfield last week, and we will mention this, and it was the first thing I noted down after the game. 11 centre bounce attendances last week, 3 this week, and he's one of our most direct players away from stoppage. And his spread is usually quite good. And what the hell was going on with Owens? 0 centre bounce attendances and barely spent any time in the middle of the park. If Owens is not playing in that role, what is he doing out on the field?
It's an interesting one because Fisher went from 48% of contests to 11 this week.
I don't get it.
We know Chera is usually around that 48% mark. You would have argued if Chera's there, you might expect to see Fisher go down to that 11%, but you'd be expecting Chera to have that 40%. So Voss really put a lot of faith. And interesting this week, Walsh went back to his early 3rd round, 4th round of being predominantly on the ball, which I don't often agree with Kane Corns, but he made an article today about Carlton need to get the best out of Walsh. I personally think we missed, and you saw St Kilda do it when you're talking about the spread. Walsh does that run behind the stoppage, wanting the ball, and then he hits Doc Sard on that little overlap that they kept trying to do. It took us away from it, and suddenly the players weren't used. The players involved there aren't them type of players. They don't look for that inside run, and it seemed to happen repeatedly in stoppages and clearances, in centre clearances, overuse of the handball. No one was willing to kick that wide ball, and you see Jade Gresham did it 4 times in the 4th, behind the back of the contest. big kick out to the wing straight away. And that's usually where Walsh is. So I agree with you. I thought it was a very weird. It was almost like we thought we were just going to steamroll their midfield.
Yeah, exactly right. And I think the most frustrating thing about this game is that we were able to generate absolutely no run away from contest on a consistent basis, and no run from behind the initial ball carrier, which is, I mean, that's when we're playing at our best, when we've got run from behind the ball and feeding off the handball to be long and direct, and also short and direct as well. You can be both at the same time, which I thought we weren't for a long period of the night on Friday, which granted to the opposition is going to try to take that away with you. But how many times did we actually get first use of the ball from contest, and we'll piss farting around with it by hand, Cripps and Kennedy and Hewitt stuffing around with it by handball when, the game required you to go long and direct, especially with Dougal Howard going down, later in the game as well. You have to try and isolate the forwards that we have with the 6-6-6 rule as quickly as possible, because, that extra split second you take to dish out another handball and not be direct gives another second or two for the opposition defence to set up. And we saw it all night. Granted, we did have opportunities to win that game, but I mean, I thought they completely got it wrong with the midfield mix, and it showed because we got slaughtered on the spread. I mean, Seb Ross and Jay Gresham just had an absolute field day, and so did Sinclair and Hill.
Well, you saw that as well. And you were talking about the movement behind the ball. A lot's been made about Brad Hill and Sinclair's game, but if you watch their exits out of D50, that's what we've been praising Doc and Sard for. The fact someone gets the ball, they quickly look for that runner into the left or right. And you saw it time and time again, particularly from our back half. Cowan were really playing short. There was no running option. And you saw Young was guilty of it in the third. He had no option when he took the intercept mark, scuffed the kick, and it was a goal. And usually in them points, he takes the mark, Doc's running, screaming for it, Sard's running, screaming for it, and we're out that way. And we really allowed them to seat pressure on us, didn't they?
Yeah, and I think the culprit of that as well is, and not to single him out because there were poor players all over the park all night, but I think Nick Newman is a big culprit of getting the ball across half back and just taking too long and going up the line. I mean, he for me, he's been the starter of a lot of that mark, wait, then go long, and then everything just breaks down after that. Granted, look, I think you can sometimes get away with it with Charlie and Harry's aerial game, but when that's off, we just completely break down. And when you've got an uncontested situation up the line as well with all those players that we had around the ball, we're just too slow on the night too. With like our ball movement was so stagnant, can't generate any run from behind the ball. And our best passage of play was when Harry pushed up the ground, marked across half back in that. I think it was the second term. He flicked off that handball that you talk about. Cripps, who was screaming for it. We went bang, 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 got a goal out the back, and sayonara. And I don't think we saw a passage of play like that for the rest of the night.
It's amazing as well because a lot's been made about Carlton and St Kilda are very similar in we like to attack the wide areas.
Yeah.
And you saw St Kilda do what Carlton do very well. Their switch usually comes very late on or very early on in the piece. And once they've got that, they go down the wing. And you saw quite often, aside from Carlton's Harry Mackay inside ball to Cripps, and they went down that way very quickly with multiple runners as well. When Cripps took that handball, he had runners on the corridor. He could have gone back to the wing, the attacking a unit. You saw St Kilda do that marvellously, get it to the wing. Membry works so hard up that ground, and he gives that handball straight away to a runner. Straight away, they were cutting us apart time and time again. And I wanted to talk about the biggest thing for me, what you saw this week, is Voss. I agree with Voss. I think tagging's dead in today's game. I think it is a team defense and a team offense. And I agreed with what he said. If I started tagging Sinclair and Hill, my structure's dead.
Correct.
But it was a big point there that Carlton, when they get cut apart, particularly when you look at stats like 61% of the ball time we had our hands on the ball first in centre clearances, 56% in stoppages, quick ball movement kills you. It does beg the question time and time again when Carlton, it goes against the grain, really. They struggle to really have them lines. And that midfield was, I thought, appalling in the forward half. They didn't help their forwards lock the ball in as much as they should have done.
No, not at all. And you talk about team defence. It's not just about half forwards and small forwards pressing up and holding their line. It's about the line behind them as well. You know, and you mentioned it, you know, a couple of weeks ago with the 4 to 5 lines that are set up with your team defence, you know, and if one line breaks down, you've got to rely on the second and the third, and then the fourth is under the pump. You know, and I think the most frustrating thing for me on the night is that it was such a winnable game if we had have played our cards right with regards to not just team defence, but I just think getting back to that midfield group. Like, I just don't think, like, the players that we ran through there, I think are okay footballers. You know, I mean, look at the names like Walsh, Cripps, Hewitt, Kennedy. But then I look at the rotations below them, and Fisher and Cerra were just not involved at all. And that was just like, I think it's a simpler case of them not being relied upon to play in that midfield role too, because I think they're part of that, not just speed on offense, but speed on defense as well, and getting back quickly enough to stop St Kilda's forays forward, which was super disappointing. So, I mean, technically, we were playing with a man down. And I don't think Cerra, even when he's 100% fit, is ever going to play the roles well that he did on the night. I don't think he's a winger. I mean, he might be a pinch hit winger, and I don't think he's that half back or half forward role. I don't think that's his role at all. I think, to use football terms, to use a round ball game, he's a central midfielder, Pommy.
Mate, I'm with you. And I think Cerra's best work is when Walsh does that little move, and then he hits Cerra when he's away from the contest, so Cerra can get forward space.
Yep, and that's when we are at our best. When they get that mix right, and Cerra is the outlet from that sort of contested situation. Walsh is the link from inside to outside, because he makes those sweeping runs around the back of the contest, which we see him do time and time again. And that is when he's at his best. That's when we're at our best. And that's when guys like Cerra and Fisher can utilise that type of play. And I know I keep harping on about, I was bemused at Fisher's role. Just bemused as to why he did not spend a hell of a lot more time at centre bounce attendances, especially given the fact that St Kilda's strength is spread.
I also think as well, especially after last week, the week before, Fisher was arguably close to one of the best on ground.
Mate, and against the Fremantle midfield, who is touted as one of the best in the league, they've got some absolute guns that go through there. So, look, for me, I think the coach has got it wrong tactically. That's how I'm looking at it.
Mate, I'm with you. And I think just before we go on to other things, the kicking, I'm a firm believer that, that kicking was woeful. But you've got to remember, Carlton's forwards have kicked high percentages. They're well in the top echelon of AFL inside 50s to goals.
Correct. Yeah.
And them games happen. But I will say that I do think a lot of pressure came on them kicks. And it's amazing what pressure does. We talk about tackle pressure, scoreboard pressure. Suddenly, they had to kick them goals, where in times gone by, they've been icing on the cake goals for Carlton.
That's exactly right.
Everything was going wrong. They had to kick them. And that is a good lesson for them boys, that they didn't deserve to win that game. They had a chance to.
Yeah, exactly right. And I mean, you look at the missed set shots, and De Conning's never really been, I mean, even at VFL level, I don't think his set shot is anything special. And George Hewitt, we know, can't kick over. He couldn't hit a barn. He couldn't hit the side of a barn. We know his kicking's not his forte. You know, but then you also look back at it and you think, well, if they had if one of those blokes had to kick the goal, it goes back to the centre, and you don't get those other opportunities, do you? So it's all swings and roundabouts, isn't it? And St Kilda could have kicked themselves out of the game in that first quarter. They could have been up by 5 or 6 goals easily in that first term. So it all evens out at the end of the day with all that sort of stuff. But for me, the majority, the big factor as to why we lost was purely based on uncontested possessions and St Kilda's ability to spread away from the contest. And it's as simple as that. Like, that made up 70 to 75% of the result in my mind, not the goal kicking. The goal kicking is a factor, obviously. But, you know, I mean, you kicked 10-18. We kicked 80-odd against. We kicked a very similar score against Fremantle, and we looked like world beaters, you know, and we held them to 50 points. We've conceded 90 against St Kilda and lost the game. So I think that factor has been looked into it far too much in my mind. I think you've got to scroll back and look at why we were in that situation, and that's where you start to pick up the pieces and get back on the high horse again.
Mate, I'm with you. I do think plus 43 uncontested possession says work rate, if anything.
people have missed the beat if they're talking about goal kicking more often in this game than anything else, anything other than that uncontested game. Period.
But we can still make finals, can't we, Paolo? I think that's what people forget.
Yeah, look, we might slip out if we lose like 7 of our last 8 or like 6 of our last 7, which is obviously not going to happen. But you know, it's pretty good analysis if you think that we're going to miss the 8. But anyway, I'll leave that for another day, mate. I don't want to get too angry. It's a Monday.
I mean, the cavalry return though, don't they? We've got Wheater in this week, scheduled Pitternet and McGovern round 18. Do you think that this week, and what do you think of McGovern? Do you think McGovern? I definitely think Quenton miss an interceptor. So do you think that this is Kemp's time to work with Wheater in and be the interceptor for 2 weeks and really open that door for McGovern to have a little target?
Yeah, and I think it's between those. I think it's between Kemp and McGovern within the next month, I would say, because Wiedering will come into that team, and that allows a third like Kemp to be able to go up and fly across and take those intercept marks, which we see Melbourne do so brilliantly, and all the gun teams do so brilliantly. So personally, I think Kemp is being played in a role where he has to defend one-on-one a little bit too much. You know, not that it's a bad thing or anything, but it's just victim of circumstance at the moment. We don't have anyone else beside him as a tall defender. So I think Wiedering coming back into the team just opens up so many options. So many options.
You can see Kemp as well as a one-on-one defender. He still has that inclination to attack the ball.
Yeah,
you can see it stuck in him.
You can see sometimes he's like,
oh, I could get that.
Yeah, I like that though. That's good. He's on the front foot, which is great, and that's what you want to see in these young players. So, and that's going to win you games more often than not.
And I think the other big one for me before we finish up, and no one's talked about this, is I really thought this game showed TDK attended 93% of stoppages and centre bounces. That's the most he's done all year. I do think that Pitternet rotation will be huge for that midfield, because my issue with TDK this week was he didn't block for his midfielders, which we saw last week. He did a lot of, got his body in the way, bought them a bit of time to get that handball out.
Yeah,
Pitternet,
exactly.
I think, is the best in the league at blocking for his midfield.
Yeah, I mean, and we've got to also think too as well. Pitternet might need a week or two to really get back into the swing of things with regards to getting his eye in. But I think that'll also lead to De Koning having more of an influence, because you know he'll be much fresher as well. And I'd also like to see him, I'd like to see him as our ruck, in the forward half as well, and in the back half too. So it lends yourself to options. And we see all the best teams use 2 rucks now. You look at Melbourne, they've got Gawn and Jackson. You look at Fremantle, they've got Darcy and Lobb who go through there as well. And you look at St Kilda too. I'm not saying that they're one of the better teams, but they've got Marshall and Ryder that can go through there too. So I think Pitternet coming back, again, like Wiedering, it's just going to open up all the options too. And you get those fresh rucks onto the ball as well, and they can have more of an influence. And as you said, you're able to block more too, which is what De Koning was good at in that Freo game against Darcy. I thought he outplayed him really well. But then again, probably just got worked over a little bit by the likes of Marshall and whatnot. So he's developed at a rate of knots this year, and we can't knock that. To do it as a sole ruckman with only Jack in there as a pinch hit, and I think Pitternet coming back means Jack will spend more time across that half forward line as an outlet, and we know how good of an outlet he is for us, and that'll fuel our game going forward of centre too. So there's a little bit of momentum still to be gained in the back half of the year with some players coming back in. I think Wiedering and Pitternet are just going to open up so many more options for us.
Mate, I couldn't agree more, and I think that should make the audience feel better, because Uncle Pom and Paolo are telling you, chill out, get off the ladder predictor, get off the doomsday, sit back, relax. They had a shit game. They weren't at the races. Plenty of fish, though, left for us to catch before the end of the year.
Of course, mate. And like you look at it too now, and the things that we are talking about now, centre bounce attendances, certain players rotating through there and coming up with a better mix than what we did on Friday night, it's fixable. It's just chipping away at the edges. It's not that the whole bottom has fallen out and we're playing T-ball again. It's just getting that midfield mix right and then the rest of your game is fueled by that too. As I said, I think the coaches just got it wrong on Friday night based on what I'm looking at here. And we've seen time and time again this year, Pommy, that we always respond after a loss. And I have no doubt this Sunday afternoon that they will again. And West Coast, with the form they're in, they're going to give you the opportunity to attack and flow with your own game style. So, man, I'm excited for Sunday. I'm excited for what the next fortnight and 3 weeks holds, mate. You know,
mate, I'm with you. When I watch West Coast as well, they're a very slow side. And I think if ever there was a game I could pick from what I saw this week for them to learn on the job, Eagles are probably that side, because if you play that slow, boring game, the Eagles are in it. If you get it out wide, you spread, you can pull them apart.
Yeah, exactly. And they're not going to, I mean, not that they're not going to chase hard, but their season's over. So they don't have much to play for anything. And if you get on top early with that type of gameplay, they're not going to want to chase and hunt you down like they would if they were playing for a spot in the 8. So hit them hard, hit them early, and, just go out there and get on the front foot and bring it to them. Bring the game to them, mate. Go out and sound them out. I mean, that's what was frustrating about Friday night. So, look, as I said, we know these boys respond. They will on Sunday, and I've got no doubt in my mind on Sunday that we'll get the job done.
Mate, you've heard it here first. Uncle Pom and Paolo, we're not worried. Chill out. Like I say, get off Squibble and that AFL predictor.
Oh, mate,
block it from your books.
Squibble. Actually don't look 8 weeks ahead, right? Have the premiership and have finals in your mind, which is what we all want, right? That's great, fantastic. But don't go through and try to pick this, and this. So,
mate, Essendon proved. Do you know what I mean? All these top 4 sides will drop one game at least from now to the end of the year.
Spot on, mate. Spot on. And, if you're going to analyse the way the team is going to play over the next 8 weeks by going through a ladder predictor and saying, oh, we're going to drop out. Well, you obviously haven't watched the way we've played this year and how much improvement we've made from the start of the year. And you've got to look at the players coming back into who are absolutely massive to the way we structure up as a football team. So just calm the jets, cool the jets. It's all okay, Pommy. It's all right.
Mate, Melbourne's still blue.
Yeah.
Still blue. Make sure everyone as well, go check out the Jumper Punch, have their own YouTube channel. They do great interviews with some icons of the game. And every Tuesday as well, check them out on Blue Abroad. You'll see them. Beautiful Mars and
check out our TikTok as well. It's starting to go bloody nuts. We got the wolf going, mate. We got the wolf back at the ground. I'm sure everybody heard that. I'm sure you heard that through the live stream, Pommy, on Friday night.
Shame BT thought you were booing Sard.
Yeah. But see, these things too, and to stray away from the game a little bit, these are things that these are things that we're trying to do it's all about uniting everybody and trying to galvanise everybody. And we don't like that division. There were like maybe a very minuscule amount that were like, oh, he short kicks too much. Well, isn't that even better if he's having like 2 short kicks in the space of 5 seconds and it's woof, woof.
I've got to say, we brought the wolf on the watch along, and there was a passage of play where he had about 4 little dinky kicks, and I thought I turned into a chihuahua.
Nothing wrong with that.
But nah, mate, you're doing some wonderful work. Stick together, Bluebaggers. Make sure you all like and subscribe as well. 48% of you are just lurking and watching me in the showers. Hit that subscribe button. Help a Pom out. But thank you very much, Paolo.
No,
much
mate,
love.
It's a pleasure to do it with you, mate. I always love doing these things with you, and you do fantastic work. And you are an educator for fans, supporters, and members, not only in the Carlton community, but in the Aussie Rules community. So keep up the good work, my friend. Much love.
Cheers, mate. Thank you very much, and enjoy the rest of your day, peeps.